going to take a while for me to continue to talk about the new creation myth that I didn't tell you. But for me to talk about it and try to catch up around the general areas of outlining it verbally as though I had told you the myth, it's going to take a while longer. I'm trying to catch up, but just as life happens on this planet, and us taping every other night, it seems as though even between these however many hours or in 2 days, that it seems like we get further behind every time. So don't blame me. Right? Timex or the Seiko Corporation or somebody. So I'm still referring to the areas, even if I do not in each and every paragraph and every 2 or 3 minutes refer back to the non-specified creation myth. That's still the general area, that and the other things I did specify in the last 2 or 3 tapings. I want you to consider matters that are going beyond any form of a trinity, of the triaxial possibilities. As I was mentioning, there would be the possibility I was suggesting last time that all of this idea of there being a third force, of there always being, in the, at least what I'm going ahead and use now since I use the term anyway from the good old Greeks and the Latins, of really stretching it into more of a contemporary use of tertium quid, but the idea of a trinity, the idea of 3 forces, the idea that they're opposites and then there's something else. And last time we were taking, if you recall, I asked you to consider the possibility, not that that's not true, but that it could be not true, and it would not matter, because another possibility would be that even if that had no validity, then it would serve this purpose for a few people, is to keep them from being unprofitably hypnotized and captured by this eternal struggle between what appears to be opposites. And that's where we were in that particular area last time we were taping. But can you take that even a step further? Not only is it possible that there would be ascending levels of complexity, that let us say you're going from the great old question of either/or, the great dichotomies of everything. Are myths true or are myths just tales? Should we go up in life or should we go down in life? Should we believe in that which is true or that which is an error? Should we all be good people or bad people? That to go from the either/or apparent struggle, that you could go into an area, which all of you have got to have some sort of ability to do that by now, to conceive of the possibility that between the either, beyond the either and or, is another possibility. If nothing else, of the disaffected, the disinterested, the apparently disassociated third possibility, the literal tertium quid. But then there's got to be one beyond that, is what I was trying to sketch out. That if you start out in ordinary intelligence is dealing with, don't anybody get frightened and go to sleep yet. This is not philosophy for you. For you people out there on tape, this is not Philosophy 101, because I am certainly not qualified to teach Philosophy 101. But said he, sotto voce, God knows who is anyway. But instead of this, great old historical, instead of it being the either or, if you get just a little bit better, which is a whole lot better, but if you can get a little bit better in your own nervous system, then you're dealing with do you follow? That is, that would hide in there the idea of a third force, a tertium quid. That is no longer just the either or, it's the either or. Or. That is life divided up into good acts and bad acts, which is what ordinary intelligence is dealing with, whether it appear to be morally, intellectually. That is the level of everyone's ordinary intelligence, is the dichotomy. But then there is a level of improvement, that you're becoming more manifold in your thinking, if you can conceive of the fact that, yeah, I understand, I can feel it. It's not theoretical. My own nervous system is wired up in such a way energetically that what I want to see is everything divided into two. So I got that. That's the either or. But now, I can perceive of another possibility. Every now and then, it strikes me that it's not just either or, there's something else. And that's what I mean by the other or. It's the either or the tertium quid situation, the triaxial situation. But there's a place beyond that. Because you understand, if you get here, you're back. I shouldn't say back. Can you follow me? At another level, you're now into another dichotomy. That is there any validity to the ordinary way of thinking or my new way of thinking? Which is it? There is a place beyond that. And that's what I was trying to sketch out, that some of you were laughing at without necessarily knowing why you were reacting to it last time we were taping. It's beyond the question of, we can use any example, but are myths, since I've been saying that, are myths true or are myths simply made up tales? There's the first level of either or. The ordinary intelligence, no matter how you define myths, no matter how you defined anything, no matter what your education is, at that level, which is the level that runs three-dimensional intelligence in life's body right now, that's all that's necessary. That's all that can be perceived. That's all that seems to offer any profitable flow of energy, is to ask, is something this or that? Now, as long as I've talked about it, don't just pretend that, well, yes, that's child's play. That is not child's play. That is the intellectual basis that runs the world, all the way from political levels, esoteric levels of economics, the world of academia, down to laying brick and cleaning septic tanks, is the basis of it's either this or that. Is it time to go to work or is it time to take a break? Is it 10 yet so that we can take a smoke, or is it not 10? Is it 5 o'clock yet? Is it payday or not payday? Are you the guy that wanted your septic tank cleaned out or not? I ain't got all day. That is the basis of life. At the ordinary level, that's all that's necessary. So don't fall into believing by now that, well, I know better than that, or it's absolutely flawed. It's flawed from a revolutionary view, but it is not flawed. You lived up until the time prior to you having any conception of there being a kind of third force reality. You lived quite well. The rest of life is living quite well at their level. Things are moving along swimmingly, even if you do get spliced now and then. And it's operating on the basis of either or. So the next level is either or. That is, either or is the level that things operate, or there's something else that I begin to see. It's not necessarily limited to questions that, well, is that kind of behavior right or wrong? Are those kind of ideas acceptable or not? Can you live a good life by not being a Christian, or do you have to be a Christian? Or do you have to be religious, or can you be non-religious? There's something beyond that. But just because you got beyond that, that is not the end of it, because then you can fall right back into, not back into in the sense that you normally think of it, but you are into a new level of, well, it's either old way of thinking or my new way of thinking. Because if it's that, then your new way of thinking is now a new old way of thinking. Do you understand? All you've got is a new dichotomy, except whereas up here, let's say that this was the first part of that kind of dichotomy, and that's the second part, all right? But now, combined, those two now make up a new first part, and you've got a whole new second part. Reminding you that this is not philosophy. It's to show you, or to try to get you to picture for yourself, that a great old classic picturization has been used in, God forgive me for saying it, philosophy, metaphysical areas, mythical areas, is that in some way the heroic journey of a man trying to pursue wisdom is infinite. And the picture I was about to bring up that's been used all over the world is that the pursuit of wisdom, the trek of understanding, is like the continual peeling away of the layers of an onion. Just, you peel away one and there's more and there's more and there's more. That's one level. So what I'm suggesting now is you try and picture, not only is it not necessarily limited to, and that sounds wonderful. There are people that can swoon with that and be satisfied the rest of their life to hear, that's right. The more I think about things, the more I read, the more I listen to lectures, I think, boy, I understand it now. Now I understand the basis of morality. And then I go to another lecture, I buy the latest book, and I realize, no, it's a little more complex than that. And so there seems to be no end to this great intellectual journey. And it does sound just like the continual peeling. Just when you think, I got it down, there's another layer, another level, another skin to be peeled away. It is not just the continual peeling away of the layers of onion skins, nor is it even the attempt to put them back together. What I'm suggesting to you, that it might be possible to literally lay that onion down and pick up a whole new vegetable. That is beyond, it's beyond any kind of continual direction of, well, I keep peeling away in this direction. That is good enough hobby for ordinary people. Even ordinarily, very strong intellectually directed people. But that is it is self-explanatory without them understanding it as announcements it's making within its own activities by being enameled of. That's a little joke. By being fascinated by the picture of wisdom and understanding being infinite, that you just continue to peel away these layers. All that is a dichotomous level of understanding still, if we're going to call it understanding, that I'm making progress and is non-stop, just over and over and over and over. That is a decent enough hobby. Plus, it's probably cheaper than collecting stamps. The post office, as long as people keep buying them, from what I hear, the post office seems to be determined to keep putting them out, so you'll never catch up. But, of course, you're not supposed to. It's just a hobby, right? If indeed that kind of understanding, that kind of pursuit of knowledge is like the infinite peeling of an infinitely sized onion, then that is a level of dichotomous thinking, and you've got to be able to go beyond that. It's not that it's right, it's not that it's wrong. And there's a level beyond you saying, well, I'm to the point now that I understand that all opposites, or any time you only apparently got two choices, that's spurious at least. And I'm not going to fall for it because there's another possibility. But after a period of time, you have now turned that situation into the second level. Because it is now still that you think, well, the choice is of me thinking back at the old level, like everybody else, like my old nervous system wants to, that sees everything in opposites. So I either, that's one choice, that I can weaken, or whatever it is, the humidity is such that it drags me back to my old level. So I can either do that, or I can try and think in this new way. But do you understand? Now you've got two choices again. But everyone at some station along this kind of imaginary journey would believe that, hey, that's progress. That may be the ultimate progress, that at least now I can distinguish between old, mechanical, ordinary, fruitless, inconclusive ways of thinking, and now the new way of thinking. Now, finally, perhaps you might say to yourself, I have the possibility of a valid choice. Of one thing, this old way, which I spent my whole life doing, and I see now was not promising at all, was not fruitful. And now this new way, as elusive as it seems to be, but now you're back to two choices. But you would think, surely, yeah, but the second choice, now we're up to at least some decent choices. Because these are not the old kind of choices that are available. Now I got, by God, an extraordinary choice. Well, maybe. Maybe before you thought that. But now that you think, well, now I got the choice. I can either be smarter, I can be more intelligent, I can have new intelligence, I can be thinking in a part of my brain that's never been excited and executed before, or I might slip back in my old way. But I definitely have now a reasonable, potentially profitable choice. Now I got to suggest to you, and all of that sounds like something that you could have picked directly up from me. If you want to lay the blame somewhere, I'll take it right now for a second. But may I suggest to you that anytime you have what appears to be a matter of choice, you got a problem. Oh, I know you don't think of it as a problem, but you got a problem. That is, anytime you think you got a choice, I got to tell you this, you got another choice. And now what I'm trying to point out to you, at least for the time being, is I'm trying to hint to you at the next level, that choice is almost the eradication of choice. I think I might be able to explain it, I almost laughingly said better, in a moment. I think I'm going to call it, if you'd like to try and figure it out, I'm going to call it the Great AC. But it's like almost a destruction, almost a truly transcending of choice. A few collateral matters in all of this I'd like to point out. If you begin to get a glimpse of changing the levels, is also more of why there can be no such thing. There's never been any myth, any paradigm that was satisfying, that claimed exclusivity, which, to even fly, you have got to have the claim of exclusivity as a tail, or you'll never get that kind of kite ever off of terra firma. It will never fly, nobody will ever salute it, nobody will ever go, wow, look at that idea. Look at that belief system. Look at those theories. Look at those pictures of life and man. It's got to have a claim of exclusivity, or the first level of either or will not buy into the story, will not even be attractive, will not even go and believe it smells some sort of ideological bakery in action. Because unless the claim is there of exclusivity, that is, we're either right or we're wrong. And of course we're right, and everybody else is wrong. There has got to be that claim. But that is now what I was going to say about in another direction earlier. You now have information from a revolutionary sense that is flawed, just for revolutionary purposes, fatally so. But do you get any kind of glimpse again? I've been through this, just stated it sort of out of hand before. There is no satisfaction from a more complex view of any claim of exclusivity of a system, of an idea, even a single idea, of a religion, of a political system, of any idea or apparently nexus, complex of ideas. If it's claiming exclusivity, it is fatally flawed for any more complex purpose. Now, it's not flawed in any way at the ordinary level, because either or itself is a tacit claim of exclusivity. The slice between there divides up. One side or the other is right. You don't have a draw in either or. They don't go around and ask the judges and they decide, well, judge number A gave 3 rounds and so many points to fighter B. In fact, it does not come out as a draw. The slice itself is the claim of exclusivity. The attraction of any idea or complex of ideas has within it a claim of exclusivity, or you'd never heard of it. There would be no history of it. You do not, there are no prophets. There's no guy named Bunky that showed up one time and he says, I got this great idea from the gods, and it might be true for all I know. Now, if he did do that, notice you never heard of him. Now, I may know something about him, but the point is, historically, you do not find the name Bunky Lapidus anywhere. Because if he did not make a claim, if he gave a good idea and a bunch of people went, wow, that's great, is that God said that was what we should do right now, and he went, well, now, God didn't say you had to. Then I got to tell you, half the crowd would begin to wander off, and let's go by, down the street. There was some Italian ice. Let's go down there. And if they say, well, wait a minute. Now, did God actually, the half that stayed, they said, well, now, if he didn't say that we actually had to. And so if he said, well, if you won't leave, I'm just trying to be more truthful. Maybe he didn't put it to me that way. And then maybe if that half the crowd that stayed said, well, now, are you telling us literally that God told you that, or is it something you just thought about? And if he said, well, you understand, half of them would begin to. The only fully valid claim, well, let's attack the first level, the dichotomous level, the ordinary level. The only fully valid claim for any paradigm, for any explanation of life, even at that level. Now, this is going to make sense, you'll hear me, but there should be a small explosion neurally in some of you, because you just run head on into the limits of ordinary thinking. But the only fully valid claim of any paradigm, any explanation for ordinary life, would be a claim, that is, a presentation, a picture that would include every possible idea and everything that moved. That is, everything that's alive. Every idea, which actually covers it, but to try and wrap it up for you, or everything. Every action and every idea. That would be the only valid, fully valid claim of saying, all right, here is the exclusive paradigm for life. See, you can hear the sentence makes sense, except it's meaningless. That is, it is not operational at the dichotomous level, at the ordinary level at which energy is running through the human brain, through the human nervous system. That the only exclusive claim, the only valid claim that would be fully valid and would claim any exclusivity would be that it includes every aim, claim, and act that's alive. There you would have the only fully functioning, the only fully valid claim of a paradigm, a belief system, a blueprint, a template, an explanation of human life. Sounds simple enough, but if you note, no one has ever seen such a creature. I mean, they don't even find traces. Nobody's ever said, well, there may have been one, but now it's extinct. Maybe the dinosaurs swallowed it. Nobody's even ever suspected it. There's no trace of it whatsoever. Not if you look out there, because the trace isn't here, and the trace is where it would seem to be that which is yet to happen. That is, tomorrow, the future. But the trace is there, or else I couldn't say it. People could not dream the myths that they dream that have been pointing to this for years, except it seems to point backwards like, well, at one time men had such ability. Because no matter what they call it, that is exactly what they're saying would be a true, in the all capital letters, of Jew, Christian, Taoist, Shintoist, Buddhist, intelligent person. That's the IP religion, I guess. But all of that, a wise person, somebody that knew what the hell was going on, that would be the only paradigm operating in them. But the dreams always are, well, at one time we had intellectual, spiritual, moral giants walking this planet, and something happened. Nobody seems to know for sure what. Whether they made the gods mad, or the greenhouse effect way back then. The Ice Age not only made some of them's private parts shrivel, maybe their brains shriveled, and that we're left with that. See if you can connect that with something else from the last time. You recall 2 times before last when I pointed out that you could look at life itself using the human intellect as a kind of lens through which interpreted what seems to be information coming from out there that comes through the human intellect, nobody else that you can observe, no other creature, attempts to interpret what's going on. And the lens not only apparently can take in information in the human intellect, consider what's going on, interpret it, but it can apparently look inside itself and take the information and interpret it. And from several directions I tried to get you to consider, well, I finally, I think, just pointed out that in a strong hint that that lens could operate in such a way that energy could apparently flow. Waves, particles of energy could apparently go in this direction through the lens, be interpreted, and produce, let's say, result 2K. But that it could also apparently go in the opposite direction and still produce that same result. 2K I just made up, whatever the result was, that the way in which the energy flows may have no effect whatsoever. And I tried to hint at you the possible ramifications of that. So if you're back up to speed, a further expansion of that. Could you see vis-a-vis, if you want a heading for the paragraph, the intellectual reversible lens of man, comma, frustration, comma, and the question of ambiguity. I guess that's enough. So here it goes. If all apparent opposites, all either-or situations, which is the operational basis, the only basis necessary for ordinary life to survive via man, if it were true that it literally does not matter, if you look at either-or now, in regards to the lens picture of, if you consider that to be the human intellect, then apparently that could be out there, and that's apparently in here, and you can consider it going in either direction, and if it does not matter whatsoever, and you look at this as either, and that is or, and then look at that as either or, and then this is or, if it literally does not matter which way it's going, that it's not a theoretical question that should good, that we've identified good over here. Everybody, the majority of people says, right, this is good, this pile of stuff over here is good, and the pile over here is bad. And the whole world says that's true. Of course, not the whole world would, but they say that's good and that's bad. If it literally did not matter, no question about, well, now wait a minute, there's got to be some room for a gray area. We've got to be intelligent enough to realize that there's a little good and all bad, and there's a few female hormones in every man, no matter if he's a macho bricklayer, that nothing is that clear cut. Boy, am I intelligent or what? Well, of course, the answer to that is what, but boy, am I intelligent or what? What if there is no profitable discussion? Oh, there is on the way out of town. You're trying to get out of the city, you're trying to get out of your state, you're trying to get into a new area, a revolutionary area. So that kind of thing is you're whistling and walking along and kicking rocks, first trying to get away from your own hometown, of beginning to think, well, wait a minute, I'm too smart, or I begin to suspect that it's not so simple, that everything is either this or that, either or. Okay, to get out of town, whistle, think about that. But if it literally does not matter, they could have called that, instead of good and bad, if we consider that to be the historically archetypical philosophical problem facing man, instead of calling it the struggle between good and evil or true and false, if you call it the struggle between green and purple. It's not that you just think, well, you just change the words and it's a struggle between green and purple. There is no such thing, and even if there was, it'd be of no consequence. What if none of it's of any consequence? It's just that words are made to excite. Words are transfers of specific kinds of energy, and just because you hear me say, it could have possibly been described, very possibly, we're just in a different part of the universe, it could have been described, as it is in some places, I might add, as the struggle between green and purple. Now your feeling is, well, so what? If there is such a struggle, that's meaningless. Now if I say, well, all right, here it's known as the struggle between decency and indecency. And you went, oh, well, all right. Between civilized behavior and criminal behavior. Well, all right. Now we're getting the L. Okay, I know what you mean. That's serious, but don't give me this stuff like green and purple. What if it doesn't matter? Now we're still just about to start this paragraph if you are now up to date. If that were the basis, if that were a fair telling of a more complex level, that it would not matter which way things are running, not theoretically, no question that one's better than the other, not even a shade, not even relatively speaking, just literally it does not matter because the energy could go back and forth if indeed the energies are correctly named, which I don't care is the point you've got to say. That they are mutually exclusive. It's either or. It's good and it's bad, and by God they don't mix. So what? If they can run in either direction. There's these two great, if you look out there on the field of human affairs, and it's these two great armies, and it's constantly the sounds of hoofbeats, the treads of tanks, warfare, screams, and here it is, the green army. And the purple ones seem to be in retreat. And then there are more shouts and hollers and screams and crucifixions and suicides and debates. And then apparently here goes the greens, they're running, and the purple's winning. What if it doesn't matter? That as long as the battle is raging, as long as life's alive, it's alive. Now if that be true, we're still not to where this paragraph is starting. This is still the intro. If energy can flow profitably, unconditionally, profitably in either direction, could you then see this as an unrecognized basis of all uncertainties, all conflicts, and all ambiguities? That is the basis. If you can see that, you will see that the world ambiguities covers it, because that's the basis of conflict and everything else. For the time being, I'll use that word. It's good enough for the night. If you can see that, then you have got all conflict, all uncertainty, all doubt, all inconclusiveness, all ambiguity is finally located by God and mapped. You got it down. You don't need to wait for Magellan to get home, because if some of you hadn't heard, he ain't coming back. But now you can plot that, at least that part out. You've got some new area of internal terra firma. That is where everything seems to be in doubt. It springs from that. If that seemed to be even too vague, let me make it a little more specific. You could look at all ambiguity, all uncertainty, behaviorally, but specifically right now in here, because behaviorally, none of you should be that uncertain about how to operate at the primary level, or you shouldn't be here. That is, to wonder, should I have 17 pizzas with triple anchovies tonight, or should I drink some battery acid? Should I try and have sex with a fellow human being, or something else? A rebuilt Eltzel or something. So it is more a matter of thought than it is behavior. But can you see what I started to say? Of all forms of uncertainty, all forms of ambiguity, you could actually see it as being old intelligence having to deal with the simultaneous reality of all dualities. Or could you see, I'll put it to you another way, of ambiguity, all uncertainties, all doubts, but all ambiguity not as some kind of psychological quandary, but it's a normally unrecognized acquiescence to the complexity of spatial existence. Well, I was trying to simplify it. I like that. That covered it. Ambiguity is an unrecognized, as your own intellect having to deal with the simultaneous reality of that seems to be opposites, that seems to be the mutually exclusive dichotomy of life. But it is not some kind of psychological flaw. It is not something that comes about through traumas you've suffered, through some kind of unconscious past experiences that now affect your thinking. It's quite literally that the nervous system is having to agree to, it's having to submit to the normally unrecognized, it's having to acquiesce without knowing it to the complexities, to say the least, of spatial existence, of all this going on at once. Not only either or, but the third part of either or, and then another part beyond either or. And when I say it's unmapped, of course, what I'm referring to is that ordinarily the intellect cannot think about it, cannot think about what I'm saying, and so it's left with trying to deal with, say, a problem that has three armies going out there fighting, and it's such that it can only see literally two of them. And so there's always action with not just the green and purple army that can see out there, and sometimes the green's winning, sometimes the purple, and no matter which side this guy is wired up, my example, to favor. There is a third action going on that it can't identify. Be like a ghost army. Be like some old 1940s, those kind of screwball comedies they used to call them, with Topper or somebody, a ghost that comes back, and it's these two people. There's a good one. It was a man and his wife, if you don't know, and for some reason this ghost, this old departed guy, takes up with them. And as best they could handle the special effects of trick photography back in the 30s and the 40s, here this guy and his wife, take that as being two forces, a green and purple army, and them trying to do things, and then this guy would come in and out of the picture, and sometimes you couldn't see him, he was supposed to be invisible, and things would move. They'd try to do something, and he'd do something else. They'd try to set the table for guests, and every time they'd pour out some wine, he'd drink it, and they'd turn around and it's gone. All right. Rather than it being humorous, ordinary intelligence does not find that humorous. It finds it to be the basis of uncertainty, ambiguity. And what the hell's going on? Because here the two armies, good and evil, right and wrong, either or, purple and green, back and forth, but there's always something else going on, and no matter where ordinary intelligence looks, it's like Topper. It's like a cheap special effects, and you can't tell there's things going on here, and it doesn't make any sense. And of course, it's a short step for many people wired up and primed from that to take the myths that might explain some of that and begin to take them literally and begin to think, well, it's angels or it's demons, it's actual gods, real people outside the system. They're seeing down magnetic waves or something and affecting this. There's a third army out there fighting, and they're simply invisible. Some other people see them, but they call it then. They think, well, the one they're seeing is the green, and then they see a purple, and then they find a third one missing. But there's another third army out there on the plain. It creates its own noise, its own smoke, and sometimes it's pushing both of the ones you see, sometimes it's pushing one of them more than the other. And you look, and it looks like that the green one suddenly is being overtaken by the purple, when the greens were ahead yesterday, your side, goodness, justice, the Albanian way of life, and they were winning, and now suddenly you turn around and they're losing, and you can't understand why. The purple army doesn't seem to be any bigger, but it's like an invisible force is tripping them or pushing them. It is. There's another army that may have suddenly turned on them, and now it may be green or purple and the invisible army against your guys. And you think, how could this be? You just can't see it. Let me drag into another paragraph right quick, that if I had specifically begun to tell you my new creation myth, if I had specifically written it out or told you an actual story from beginning to end, which, of course, some of you should be sharp enough that before this is over, I'm assuming that you'll hear that I actually told it to you. It's just that I've torn it into so many pieces that it makes the annual output of Carter's Little Liver Pills seem to be small enough to fit in your pocket. I'm just trying to tear it apart. No. Look over there, quick. Where? All right. If I had told you the actual myth, my creation myth, I would not have started it out, more or less, by telling you that something was created out of nothing, that something came from nothing. That would not have been part of this brand new, first one in a couple of thousand years. It had been the first meaningful one, useful one. I would not have told you, since creation story obviously would have to touch on that, or else I could be attacked for fraud in advertising. I would not have told you in that myth that something came from nothing. But I would not have told you within that myth that something came from something. Now we're getting to what I was going to tell you. I was going to name it the AC. It's what we've been talking. It's what we've been talking about up till now, believe it or not. So consider, if you're going to have a creation myth, a creation story, I've just wiped out the two possibilities. It's got to either be that something came from nothing, or else just something kind of emanated, kind of grew and progressed from something that was already extant. I wouldn't have told you either of those. What you'd have to do is be able to intellectually grasp a whole new vegetable. And I was going to put a name on it, which almost becomes oxymoronical for me to say all the things I would not have told you, for me to go ahead and say, well, all right, now I'm going to put a name on the very things I wouldn't have done, but what are you going to do when it's 9 degrees in Vail? It is, I present to you, a form of, quote, alternative compromise. Now that I've said it, even I don't like it all that much, but again, what are you going to do when it snows in Key West? It has some validity. I'm not actually playing a complete cop-out on my term of alternative compromise. Because it's not, what I mean by it, it's not either a going forward or going backwards. It's not that things were either created from something or things created from nothing. And it's not even a third direction from those two possibilities, which would simply be the other level of either or turned into either or not either or. It's a kind of alternative compromise. It is sort of like this then. It'd be like combining two opposites, whatever they are, forward and backward, either or, right or wrong, true or false. It'd be like combining two obvious, apparent, useful, operational opposites, and then finding an alternative to even that sum. Didn't help much, did it? That would be an alternative compromise. Or if you can handle it, it would be a compromise alternative. You understand? It's not being either one of the two choices. It's not being a third possibility that those two choices don't cover it all, and therefore there has to be, indeed, a tertium quid, a third alternative. It's not even that. And it's not even taking that which obviously are two possibilities, even if there's any more, but taking the two and adding them together, and you would think at least, well, divide by two, and you'd come up with some sort of reasonable, almost compromise. Yeah, but I didn't say compromise. I said an alternative compromise. It's got to be an alternative compromise to whatever the best intellectual compromise you could come up with, given the choices. You mean the two choices? Yeah. How about even three choices, right? How about even more choices? Take your best shot. Whatever it is, it's got to be an alternative to what seems to be, or what might be obvious at the present moment to you as the choices, even if it is, well, I see two choices like everybody else. But then I suspect very highly a third one. Okay, great. So what is it? Alternative compromise. You mean it's one of those three? No. It's some combination of those three? No. Some combination of those two divided by three? No. It is almost like eternal heterodoxy. That no matter what is the accepted belief And let's take it now in you, or it could be out there. It doesn't matter. Remember the reversible. That whatever the accepted belief is, you're against it. And if they change the belief right while you're staying there, doesn't matter. Even if you change yours, and they don't seem to change theirs. Of course, that's when you think, well, it matters whether I'm looking out there or looking in here. Right. That no matter. The belief system about this particular either or right now out there is either. In that case, now you got to remember, this is true, more complex heterodoxy, because you're not just against either or, you're against not the either or, you're against whatever is the accepted belief as to the propriety of the either or. And if it changes apparently out there while you're thinking about it, it doesn't matter. You simply change along with it. You don't swap sides. You got to understand. If they say, all right, in the either or conflict, either is good. Between the green and the purple army, the green army is the one that's on the side of justice. You go, all right, in that case, I'm against it. Not the green army. I'm against this belief that you people have that the green army is in favor, or is the proper one to support. If, while you were saying that, if they say, wait a minute, we were wrong, it's the purple army, I'm still against it. You mean the purple army? No. The choice. Yeah, but it's got to be one or the other. Well, I'm against that. No, you can't be against that. You watch me. Of course, I am really being silly now because you can't say that, and you can't do it at ordinary limit. And if you understood that, of course, you'd never say it. You're not against one of the choices, you're against the choice. And of course, you're not actually against the choice, it's that you recognize that the choice is too close to kin. That's why it is my enemy, because that's the revolutionist's only enemy. It's your own kin. If it's something foreign to you, there's no need to be against it. No need to try to kill it. No need to attack it. Because if it's really foreign to you, that means that it's irrelevant to any journey you might be able to take internally. Who do you love? People close to me. Who do you hate? Well, people close to me. Well, now you're getting somewhere. So there's a choice. I don't like the choice. I'm not in favor of the choice. What do you believe in? Nothing. Wait a minute. That's a belief. Yeah, but I don't believe in that either. I know. And pretty soon, well, it already did, it begins to make you laugh in a two-dimensional fashion. Because you're just absolutely running in circles. When you begin to see it as a spiral, though, it's not running in a circle. When you get back around to where you started, you move up. But just moving up, you can still run in a circle again. That's why you can end up thinking, well, used to, I was limited to good old two-dimensional thinking. That's when I was a child, before I got involved with this for 6 months. But now, I realize that the two great eternal choices, don't make me laugh. Now I understand those two choices don't cover it all. There are other areas untouched. So now I understand it's a choice between old thinking and this kind of stuff. All right, you may have gone around, if we take this literal I just described. Instead of running in a circle, you have taken a spin around an internal neural merry-go-round, and it's like being on a worm screw in the center, and you came back around, and you're now a little higher than you started. But now you've let it run again, and the second time around, you stayed at that level. Because the choice of, well, I can either just be an ordinary, just dumb clod like I always was. Oh, I thought I was intelligent and all that, but that old kind of two-dimensional, this or that thinking, I can either go back to that, be satisfied with that, or struggle and now to continue to fuel up myself to think in this new, absolutely different and better, more profitable way, which all that may be true enough. But you're now back to a choice. What you perceive to be a choice. There's something beyond that. And that's why, without you knowing it, much of what I say that sounds to be absolutely incongruous, oxymoronical, that gets a kind of laugh. Sometimes you may do it to yourself by now. But it's a certain kind of laugh, and you don't recognize part of the message of that laugh, and that is, hey, I got myself out of one corner, and I'm so happy that my happiness turned into a new kind of paint, and now I'm back into a brand new corner. It's that kind of laugh. If I was going to specifically give the creation myth, it would have started out maybe along these lines. I got enough time to give you a little more about perhaps the myth had I done it. One of the openings would have been, possibly, and I'll quote, "In the beginning, there was no beginning." An alternative version might have been, quote, "In the beginning, there was two beginnings. There was the real beginning, and then there was the talking beginning, which is the myth beginning." I did not bring up either one of those two to get a cheap laugh at the end of the tape here. But perhaps it was opportune enough for those of you who have ears that may be opportunely tuned that I don't have much time to try and press on with it. But consider a brand new creation myth, and the opening line is not coming from some routine smartass and not made just to confound the verbalizing part of your ordinary brain, but what if it started out and said, "In the beginning, there was no beginning"? Does that not about wrap up all of the initial quandaries, if you begin to see them as such, of all the other creation myths? Every one of every religion, every nationality, every time period, they all start out, in the beginning, comma, there was, and then it's whatever it is. Yahweh, God, Zeus, the Titans, or even nothing. But now, consider my version. In the beginning, there was no beginning. Well, I must tell you, I regret that you're not getting the full enjoyment of it. Maybe it'll hit you later. In the beginning, there was no beginning. Version 2. In the beginning, there was two beginnings. Comma, or dash, according to your inclination to use all those symbols in your sentences. But I could stop there and make up some whole new religious system just based on the first part of the sentence, or my opening sentence, that in the beginning, there was two beginnings. You don't want to think about that for a second? Maybe that'll get you later too. A beginning would normally specify, although the dictionary doesn't do so, I don't guess, but it, by all of the operations of the ordinary intellect, at the very least connotes in an ironclad way a singularity. Because you can't have, if you say, well, in the beginning I did so and so, or when we began this operation, when we began this business, when did you begin the business? Well, we started last Friday, and then we started also in February of 1947. The beginning, in a bulletproof manner, connotes a singularity in time and in space. So just the first part of my opening potential sentence, in the beginning there was two beginnings. Could any of you see the possibility of that going on to describe, do it yourself, of the basis of the human intellect? That there wasn't a beginning. Come on, it's not that subtle. What if we were back to the idea of gods? All the religion says that, all right, in the beginning was our God, a God, the exclusive God. In other words, a singularity. There can't be but one God. But what if the story started out in a religion that does not exist, which would take a creation myth that does not exist, the one I'm inferring, In the beginning were these two gods. Think of the possibilities. Not just of some fairy tale, but think of the possibilities of, if that were true, would that not begin, I hate to quote myself, but would that not begin to explain a lot? Wait a minute, there wasn't one God, it was a partnership of Smith and Jones. And they did it. Right, that's one possibility. The rest of my sentence that I was giving you, the second alternative, what if my creation myth started out, in the beginning there was two beginnings, comma or dash, the real beginning and the talking beginning. All right, you want a variation within the alternative? In the beginning there was two beginnings, the real beginning and the described beginning. Well, until we tape again, and I try to catch up some more with this, consider what seems to be the beginning, the best you can get any glimpse of it, the best you can get any feel for it inside of your own self, of what seems to be the beginning of you. Not in some real mythical sense of billions of years ago or from some other solar system or from the cosmic forces, the beginning of you as a thinking creature. Where did this seem to start? And it was not simply Ms. Jackson back in kindergarten or the second grade, whatever you remember, or whatever elementary school that you were growing up in. What seems to be, if you feel back, you can get a taste for that kind of, as they're calling it now in the astrophysical realm, begin to kind of back up theoretically in time and try and get closer and closer within a few seconds to the Big Bang. How about your Big Bang, when there seemed to be a singularity and it felt like it all began to explode out and it turned me into this multifaceted creature with conflicting opinions, feelings of either or, opposing desires. The whole thing that seems to make me unique in here, that makes me an interpreter of myself and an interpreter of out there. Think back at your possible beginning. I'm going to have to make this fast. Here goes the tape out. That what if your own creation, the creation of your own individuality, your own brain operation, that in the beginning with you, there was no beginning. Second version, in the beginning, that is of me. Not just you genetically, not just you biologically, not just you postnatum in this world, but here. That in the beginning, second alternative, there was two beginnings to me, to my thinking. There was the real beginning, who knows what the hell I mean by that. There was the real beginning, and then there was the described beginning. Oh, that one I remember. Because I remember it right now. That's me thinking. Ah! Remember, I'm referring to these as myths. Until next time, boys and girls.